All right, here's a review of Lesson 1 for Chapter 6, the beginning of the American Revolution. It's important to understand and determine the advantages and disadvantages that the colonists and Britain have at the start of the Revolutionary War, and to have worked on that matrix and chart that lists those. Did some group work prior to this to kind of review some of those things. We'll review a few of them, but we'll discuss more of those items when we get back to class. Discussion, advantages, disadvantages. One of the advantages that the colonists had was that those that were fighting for the colonists were colonists for the most part. It'll change with some other help from foreign countries. Britain, though, is having to hire mercenaries. These are Prussian soldiers, a large number of them, about 30-some thousand. If you kind of added the numbers here on the chart, and you can see the number of those that were killed and stayed in America and returned home. But they were fighting for money, and basically because their Prussian king told them they had to in the deal that they made with Britain. And so they're not necessarily fighting for any particular ideal or purpose, and that's kind of a disadvantage for Britain. The other problem is that there's money issues. Mom and dad have all the money, right? Kids don't have much. The kids actually had some other laws passed on them in the pre-war time period that we were going over previously in Chapter 5 that we didn't talk about, that said the kids couldn't mint their own money and kept it all in the hands of mom and dad. They need to have money in order to buy things. Benjamin Franklin comes up with some different types of money made out of pewter, brass, and silver, and they'll also start printing the continental paper dollar. But nobody has a lot of faith in it because they're not really a country. And if nobody has faith in your money, they're not willing to use it. And that makes it difficult to buy things that are necessary for war. Obstacles for the Patriots also are such that there is a limited number of people who are actually supporting the war effort. Some are just taking advantage of the situation and selling supplies and materials to both sides. They're afraid of what the war will turn out to be like, being on the losing side, big punishments coming with that, of course, or they're not sure what this whole independence thing is all about, and they aren't really willing to pick sides. But if the colonists want independence, we really have to outlast the British. They have more of everything, the most powerful army, navy, financial system on the planet behind them, and they have to outlast and fight them for another day, not necessarily win all kinds of battles, but they have to last longer and kill the will of the British to want to continue the fight and make it drag on. Who's the Loyalists? Who are the Loyalists? They're also known as Tories. These people would be probably those who have government jobs. If you're a member of the Anglican Church, a follower of the Anglican Church or the Church of England, if you're a priest, or you're a agent worker for the British government here in America, you're probably going to be a loyalist because your livelihood depends on it. If you're in the military here in the colonies, of course, you're going to be in favor of the British war effort. And if you just don't understand the war, you might just stay with the loyalists and stay close to mom and dad. You're afraid of what independence means and what it would turn out to be. Chaos, too much fighting amongst ourselves as amongst the colonies and amongst the colonists because they couldn't really agree on anything anyway to begin with. And it's just too tricky. And many of these loyalists usually are in big port city areas where there are large numbers of government officials, and there's a lot of trading and people necessarily that benefit specifically and directly from the contact and the trade with England. So this loyalist strength and loyalty, Tory loyalty, varied by region, strongest in the Carolinas in the South. We'll get to that a little bit later. Georgia especially being kind of a military colony, a lot of military support there to try and defend against the Spanish in the South. Major port cities, again, are the key areas. Patriots were very short of men. By the end of the war, almost every single state except for South Carolina will actually use African Americans in the war effort to try and support it. Rhode Island had an all-African American regiment in 1778. And Britain will also get into the mode of using African Americans and promising freedom to slaves if they fought for Britain at the end of the war. And this is a picture of Lord Dunmore's Ethiopian regiment that was utilized by the British at that time. And so there's kind of a division here amongst African Americans as well, and they are utilized in our major part of the war. For a project coming up here, we may look at some of the women in the war. Some served as spies, some actually fought and helped fight in the war in particular battles, as you see here with Molly Pitcher. That's her nickname. If you click on the PowerPoint that's on the wiki here for this this video broadcast here, you can go ahead and find that, and I'll probably try to provide it for you so it's easy and right out front. But many women actually do help with the war effort and are kind of close to the camps and the military camps and helping their husbands, especially if they're high-class husbands. My husband's men, fighters, soldiers from a higher class. Their women kind of follow them and tried to help give them and provide them some things that were common to a normal life during a wartime. But obstacles for the Continental Army, short of supplies. They have no industry here in the colonies. Remember, the colonies are basically a mine. They don't have training. All of these soldiers are not professional soldiers. They're common, average, everyday civilians. They're militiamen. George Washington has to turn them into a professional fighting force. And they're coming from all over the place. And they come in a variety of different mindsets and in numbers and a flow of numbers that's not consistent at all. Desertion was a huge problem. Soldiers were discouraged all the time. They had a contract that was basically about a year. Most of them being farmers and were always concerned about their crops and tending their crops, and their families and their wives and their kids and extended family members kind of took care of the farm for them while they were away, and a good number went away because of that. Each state provided its troops and supplies as it wished. George Washington spent huge amounts of time writing letters to the Continental Congress saying, please give me money to pay my soldiers, give me supplies, give me more soldiers. And the colonies basically set up, and states, or at this time they're calling themselves, are sending it as they wished or as they felt they could. And remember, this is a confederacy. We'll talk about the Articles of Confederation. It is a government that is set up during the war to help organize and fight and coordinate the war effort. And it's a loose organization. Everybody is kind of on their own, and that Continental Congress doesn't have a whole lot of immense authority over them. 1776 is a big year. Fighting in New York is some of the biggest fighting and the biggest scenes of fighting. We have 32,000 troops arriving in New York during that summer, and the British idea is that if we could win the war in the north, everything's going to fade away, take the big cities, especially New York, and when all these troops and all these ships show up, they kind of feel like the kids are going to run away and the revolution's going to be over. In particular, the very first of the key battles in New York, the Battle of Long Island, almost basically had George Washington and his army defeated. He almost got surrounded and captured. This is a particular spot where Nathan Hale became a hero. He was sent in by George Washington in New York City to be a spy. He was captured and hung, and he was the person that famously said, I regret only that I only have one life to live for my country. And he's hung as a spy. But basically George Washington in that Battle of Long Island retreats, barely makes it out through Manhattan Island into New Jersey, then into Pennsylvania. The British give chase, and the danger of the revolution dying at this point is very, very big. He splits his army up into 3 different groups, and they were all supposed to meet later on, and they across the Delaware River into New Jersey. They camp out just across from a small town in New Jersey called Trenton. This is the point where George Washington has to basically decide what he's going to do to try and keep the revolution alive. Desertion is big. Morale is at an all-time low. Very early on in the war, and winter is setting up, and the British have their Hessian soldiers and Hessian mercenaries set up in Trenton, and they're basically just waiting for the ice to freeze over on the river here, which you see a picture of the Delaware River, march across and defeat them and call it good. Or wait till the spring comes and defeat them and the colonists and the revolutionaries in the spring. And wintertime is a time when armies tended not to fight too much. It was just too difficult. They tended to hold off and just wait till the spring and reorganize themselves. But George Washington pulls a very brave and unexpected little attack on Trenton. Leaves his camp with a few soldiers to leave the campfires lit so it looks like the soldiers are there, and marches most of his army upriver and across the Delaware River in the late night hours and then early morning hours, takes them across in these boats and attacks Trenton in the early morning hours. And what we have here is a surprise in which the forces of the mercenaries in Trenton are basically overwhelmed. They are shot in their beds. They are attacked while they are sleeping. They were partying the night before. It'd be important to note here that this happened on Christmas Eve, and the Hessian German Prussian soldiers, they are celebrators of Christmas, and they were not ready for this at all. With this, a lot of big morale boost, supplies to continue the fight. A couple weeks later, he marches down the road to Princeton, New Jersey, and drives the British out of there as well, getting more supplies, and the revolution is alive. The British plan and strategy overall, and how to defeat the colonists and defeat the revolution. The insurgency is to basically attack from the north out of Canada. Remember, Britain is in Canada, down the Hudson River, down into New York. Albany is here, and then further to New York City, and then from the west and the Great Lakes to attack and split the middle colonies in half, and then basically chop up the colonies, especially in the north, and attacking some of those major forts in locations along the way. If they can do that, they can basically chop the head off of the revolution. Remember, everything is kind of starting and had started primarily up in here. The resistance was up in here in Massachusetts, the New England colonies. In September 1777, the Continental Congress flees the countryside. Into the countryside when the British take Philadelphia, where they are, of course, were meeting and were making decisions. And so George Washington at this point was on their own. Benedict Arnold helped force a retreat of the British at Fort Stanwix up in upstate New York. And at the same time, it's kind of a mixed set of victories and failures here. For the colonists, British General Burgoyne captures Fort Ticonderoga, but short of supplies, he had to retreat to Saratoga, New York in October. The battles and the warfare up here is very, very significant. Heavily, densely wooded and difficult terrain and territory for the British to get through. They weren't used to it. They were basically chopping down trees as they marched to try and get down into this southern part of the middle colonies and split the middle colonies from the New England colonies. It's this Battle of Saratoga that is going to be the pivot point in the war and immensely important to the war effort. Benedict Arnold, by the way, one of the best, most aggressive soldiers that George Washington has, if not the best. Later on to become a traitor. October 1777, the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York, up on the Hudson River, becomes an immense American victory. They capture a major general, General Burgoyne, of the British forces there, and what that victory and that battle did, that lasted over several days, is that it prevented Britain from splitting the New England colonies from the middle colonies, and it sent a message to France that these colonists possibly could have some success. And it convinces them to sign a treaty of alliance that Benjamin Franklin, he's not in the colonies at this time, he's actually in Paris, France, rubbing shoulders with the very wealthy of Paris society, and actually meets the King Louis a few times and convinces them to officially, openly send troops, money, and their navy to help gain revenge, of course, on the British for what happened in the French and Indian War. And so this is basically the key pivot point here. This is one of the key battles you really need to know. And it does now make it not just an internal imperial revolution insurgency, it's turning it now into another world war. And the revolution is another world war, and there are other countries that are going to be coming in here as well. We'll talk about them a little bit later. With France coming in, other countries will officially start to come in because, of course, they're not so much friendly with the British and have some revenge factors going on here as well. Talking about the Spanish and talking about the Dutch in here, who have opportunities to gain in North America and get back to the British. And so this is a very big deal, and this is an image and a painting of General Burgoyne surrendering here during this time period. In the west, the middle colonies attacking from the west, that plan is also foiled by the Americans out in the western frontier, out in the Ohio River Valley. Fighting involved Native Americans siding with the British again, like they did with the French and Indian War. And they're very concerned that if the kids win the war, the colonists win the war, they're going to come for all this land out here, and that's exactly what's going to happen after the war. And so this is why they side with the British. The Battle of Vincennes is out here in Indiana, is one of the key battles here in which the British tried to attack through the west and up the Hollow River Valley, and it blocks the British attack from the west, and basically the whole strategy of Britain is a failure. Make sure you know the Battle of Trenton and the Battle of Saratoga, advantages, disadvantages in the war, and you're good to go. And we'll talk about this and review this next class, and review now then lesson 2 and the remaining battles of the Revolution.